Hello, everyone. This is Parrish Alford with the Daily Journal. I'm joined by Logan Lowery, our Mississippi State beat writer, and this is Double Coverage, a production of the Daily Journal. We're going to talk all things Mississippi State and Ole Miss for the next half hour or so. Lots of football, a little basketball. Pretty soon, Logan, that'll be reversed. Be a lot of basketball, a little football, but, you know, football you have with you always. Both the basketball teams doing pretty well. We'll catch those guys later in the program. Logan, what's going on, man?
Not much. Still waiting on bowl practice to actually get started for Mississippi State. Obviously, getting picked for the Outback Bowl was probably the best Mississippi State could hope for with that 8-4 record. They were selected to the Outback Bowl. Going to play Iowa on January the 1st down in Tampa, and I'm very excited about that game. That was the game that I wanted to go to, and we're going to actually discuss some of the bowl games that we've been to on the program. Actually that we've attended so far in our careers.
Logan, I think Mississippi State's bowl fortunes changed when replay showed that Texas A&M quarterback Kellen Mond was actually down before he stood up and threw the interception to LSU that would have clinched that game for the Tigers. And 7 overtimes later, LSU gets gets the loss, and A&M gets a win. They rise in status, and so it all worked out for State there. But anyway, we'll catch that in a few moments. I wanted to talk a little bit at first about the Ole Miss defensive coordinator search from a news standpoint. That's kind of the ongoing story for the Rebels right now. Mike McIntyre, the former Colorado coach who was fired this November, is expected to interview today. You know, you never know how these things are going to go, Logan. Sometimes that interview turns south, or there's an obstacle that comes up, and the parties can't clear that hurdle. Look, Mike McIntyre knows Ole Miss. He knows Matt Luke. There's a previous history. There are lots of reasons for this search to end with Mike McIntyre. That would not be a bad thing. I know the two most prominent names were Pete Golding, right now the co-defensive coordinator and inside linebackers coach at Alabama, and Mike McIntyre. There were some other names tossed about, but honestly, this kind of got down to those two guys rather quickly. Well, Pete Golding turned down an Ole Miss offer earlier in the week, and now the search is focused on Mike McIntyre. These guys really, I think both would have been, both are good candidates. Both will be good hires wherever they are. They're different now. Pete Golding is still the young hot coach, and that carries a lot of weight these days. Lots of people like the young hot coach. This is a guy who has been in Alabama only one season, so he hasn't had the full benefit of a lot of time under Nick Saban the way Kirby Smart did when he was defensive coordinator for many years, now the head coach at Georgia. I would say that's worked out for Kirby Smart in his career. Pete Golding 1 year at Alabama. The last 2 years, he was at Texas San Antonio. And, Logan, it's a small body of work. He's a former Delta State player, a Hammond, Louisiana native, southeastern Louisiana down that way. He coached there a little bit. So I'm sure he's well acquainted with Hi-Ho Barbecue. That's a side point. But Pete Golding has a small body of work here. But it is interesting to note that in 2017, when he was still with Texas San Antonio, the Roadrunners finished like number 7 in the nation in total defense, yards allowed, which is very impressive. In 2018, the Roadrunners are like number 97 in total defense. Lots of things change over the course of a year, attrition with players, star players moving on, that sort of thing. That's a big change, 7 and 97. So a lot of that credit goes to Pete Golding, obviously. He was Nick Saban caught Nick Saban's eye. So anyway, but 1 year under Saban, still a little bit of body of work, and what we've seen from Pete Golding is impressive. His name has also been connected with the defensive coordinator search at Oklahoma. That job is still open. Alabama and Oklahoma play one another in the semifinals December 29th, so that's coming up. That'll be interesting. But it was reported later in the week that Golding was telling Alabama recruits that he was staying. He was staying in Alabama. So, you know how that goes, Logan. That might mean staying today, staying tomorrow, staying this week. We'll see what happens with that Oklahoma search for him. down the road. But that's the situation with Golding. So the Ole Miss search turned more to McIntyre. Mike McIntyre is no longer the young hot coach, okay? And Mike McIntyre's most recent body of work is getting fired, which is never a good look. But in the body of work, the years of experience for Mike McIntyre, if it comes to pass that he is the defensive coordinator at Ole Miss, one, I think they'll stop the pass, and I think they'll stop the run better than they did this season. I mean, this is a guy with a long coaching worksheet and a lot of experience and a lot of success. His success as a defensive coordinator at Duke, where he was with David Cutcliffe and Matt Luke was on that staff as well, helped him get the job at San Jose State. It's not easy to win at San Jose State. And Mike McIntyre didn't do that immediately, but he did that for a couple of years. One of them 10 wins, which is unheard of at San Jose State. That helped him make the jump to Colorado, a 6-year run there. He had a winning season only once in 2016, but that was big. 10 wins. They won the Pac-12 South Division, lost in the championship game. So, you know, as a head coach, you see a pattern of building, not always with winning seasons, but you saw growth at San Jose State. You saw some of that at Colorado, but the last 2 years, he hasn't been able to recapture what the Buffs had in 2016. But he has been a successful defensive coordinator at Duke. He's been a defensive coach mostly at other stops. He coached DBs and wide receivers during his time at Ole Miss earlier in the 2000s. He was on staff when I first got on the beat in 2002. So anyway, he has also spent time in the NFL. Bill Parcells, a very long-time successful NFL coach, liked him enough to keep him around there with the Cowboys. He coached some time with the Jets as well. So been a lot of stops, and there has been a lot of defensive success for Mike McIntyre. If that's where this ends up, I do think that'll be a good hire. And Logan, so what does it mean for Ole Miss defensively next year? Can this team be better next year? And I think that it really can. You know, it's early to say, even if it's Mike McIntyre, that you're going to see someone make an immediate jump, immediate improvement. But lots of times, Logan, you see a defense or a group of players connect with a new coach. You hear the term buy-in a lot, okay? There's often that energy that follows a coaching change that, hey, we're going to work hard and improve. But the biggest thing is sometimes you see a new coach come in and just take the talent on hand, even though it's notably not very much at Ole Miss on the defensive side. But sometimes it's just moving guys around, putting them in different spots, in addition with that energy, and you can see some improvement. There will be some Ole Miss guys, no matter who the hire is, that see this as a second chance. You know, so we'll see. I think most of that improvement is going to have to come with the talent that's on hand, unless something changes here in these last days of recruiting before the early signing date on December 19th. Well, it's going to come with the guys already on the roster, and it can come that way because of these other factors. But we'll see. Looks like it could be Mike McIntyre. I think that'll be a good hire. If it comes to that, and may know something later this week. We'll see.
Yeah, and I saw that a little bit like we were talking about in 2016 to 2017 with Mississippi State's defense. In 2016, they had Peter Sermon, first-year defensive coordinator, and that defense was awful. I mean, they couldn't stop anybody. And they didn't have much of a turnover personnel-wise, but they were 17. And Mississippi State made leaps and bounds better than they were a year before. And like I said, with much of the same personnel on the field, it just had to do with the scheme, putting those guys in the right position to make plays. And, you know, that's kind of carried over this year with Bob Shoop's defense. Bob Shoop, Mississippi State's going to have to try to hang on to him, you know, this year. That defense was so well. He was a finalist for the Broyles Award, you know, the top award that goes to the top assistant coach in college football. That was won by Mike Locke. Coach was the offensive coordinator at Alabama. I guess he still is for the time being. But, you know, Bob Shoop's defense has been really good this year. Grantham's was good last year. And then 2 years ago, it was awful under Peter Sermon. So that can, a 1 year, back to back, can you see a big improvement just with a coaching change?
All right, Logan. Well, let's talk these bowl games a little bit. Obviously, that has not been a discussion for Ole Miss all season. The appeal didn't go their way. You kind of saw it going that way. So not so much a discussion for Ole Miss, but State gets into the Outback Bowl, and we have some experience with these games. Although yours has been in Florida more than mine. Let's talk about where we've been and kind of the opportunities that are out there for SEC teams. So why don't you start us off?
Yeah, Parrish and I both put together a list of just some of the bowl games that we've been to over our careers and covered. Looking at it, I'm about to go to my 10th bowl game. I've been to 6 different bowls, but all this time. So I guess I've been to 7 different bowls, out of my 10 stops or whatever. So, like I said, I've been to Florida. Most of my bowl stops have been in Florida. I think probably over half of them have been, and most of them have been in the Gator / Tax Slayer Bowl. But I think Parrish, you've been to, 7 different bowls for you?
7 different bowls, several of them multiple times. So it's interesting. But you would think, Logan, I've always kind of felt like, hey, if you hang around long enough, you just about cover everything. And I finally made it to the College World Series in 2014. The Rebels should be pretty good again. Maybe I'll get back one day. But if you hang around, usually you cover almost everything. Well, that hasn't played out. That theory hasn't been as good with a bowl game in Florida. I haven't covered one inside the state lines. I walked around the Gator Bowl, Tax Slayer Bowl, what have you. I walked around the Jacksonville Jaguars Stadium when I was down there covering the NCAA tournament with Ole Miss a few years ago, the Stephon Moody year. All right, and I have covered a game inside Citrus Bowl Stadium when Ole Miss and Florida State played there to open the 2016 season. But I've not covered a bowl game in Florida, and these are old hat for you.
Yeah, it is. And, like you said, I haven't been around, too terribly. I guess I've been doing this a little over a decade now, but I've been to the College World Series back-to-back the last 2 years. It's been a really amazing, the run Mississippi State's been on. I've covered a bunch of national championship games in the last couple of years, in Omaha and, back-to-back women's final, national championships. And I never thought I would ever cover a national championship, Parrish. I've covered Mississippi State and Ole Miss throughout my career, and I never thought I would see either one of them in a national championship. And here I've been to 3. Mississippi State still hasn't won one, that I've covered, but I'm 0-3 in national championship appearances.
Well, I do think, Logan, the what State has done with baseball a couple of times, women's basketball, what both of these teams have done with football at different times, takes away from that argument that sometimes you hear the bigger schools say, oh, there's a ceiling. Oh, you can't do this at Mississippi State, or you can't do this at Ole Miss. Ole Miss was in New Year's 6 games for 2 straight years, New Year's 6 bowl games in 14 and 15. If you can get that far in the discussion, you go back, Logan, both of those football seasons, we saw where Ole Miss and Mississippi State fit inside those college football playoff rankings on a weekly basis. We saw what November was like for those teams in those seasons. And if you're there in November, you're talking about just a couple of plays. You're talking about, for Ole Miss, you're talking about Laquan Treadwell crossing that goal line against Auburn, not getting hurt, staying healthy. And then maybe that Arkansas game in a couple of weeks looks different. I mean, it's a really different feel if Treadwell scores against Auburn and doesn't get hurt. So the idea that Ole Miss or Mississippi State can't get into the college football playoff, can't win a national championship. If you put yourself in position, things have to happen right. It's not only about you putting yourself in position. You have to have some good fortune. But we've seen both of these programs do it, not every year, not at an Alabama level, okay? And it's not like they are Ohio State, who is like on the edge every year. They're not right there every year, but they can get there. Now that's my point. So when people start saying, oh, you can't achieve this, I disagree.
Yeah, and like I said, that 2014 was pretty special for both Mississippi State and Ole Miss. And like I said, neither one could, get it finished down the stretch during that month of November. But that was a fun year. I talked about the national championships a while ago. I didn't think I'd ever cover the number one football team in the country either, and I was able to do that for over a month. And that was a special time. A lot of eyes were in Starkville that season, and it was pretty special for a lot of folks that covered or that watch the maroon and white or cheer for the maroon and white or whatever. That was a pretty special year, and probably a year that they'll always remember.
Well, I've covered the number one football team many times, Logan. It just hasn't always been on my beat. I've never covered it as the team I was the beat writer for. All right, let's talk about these bowl games a little bit, man. Let's ranking the experience. What's been your best experience?
My best experience was actually the Belk Bowl. Believe it or not, I guess I went into the bowl with kind of low expectations. Really didn't know what to expect going up to Charlotte, and those folks just did a really fine job of putting that thing on. Went out to the Charlotte Motor Speedway, got to participate in the Richard Petty driving experience with the team, which was pretty cool. It actually had rained that morning, so we actually didn't get to take the stock cars out, but they had some rental cars there and had a professional driver behind the wheel. So we got up well over 100 miles an hour out there on that track. And, it was just a fun experience. They did a really good job putting it on. Granted, the day that the Belk Bowl happened, Mississippi State played NC State in that game. It just poured down rain that day. And, but the Panther Stadium was awesome. They really treated us well. So that's my number one, the Belk Bowl in 2015.
Well, I'll tell you what, Logan, and let me say this. When we talk about these experiences, one of the first things I learned in newspaper many years ago, back in the late 80s, by Tom Morris, who was our publisher, he said, Parrish, come here, man. Don't go wherever you go. Don't come back and write about what a great experience you had, or complain about your seat, or what a poor experience you had, because people don't care. Hey, people don't care what kind of experience the media has. So when you hear us ranking these bowl games, it kind of goes against how I was raised. But I'll tell you this: when we talk about the experience that we've had, Logan, it's just that much more in terms of opportunity for the fans that attend these bowl games. Because my point has always been, these people aren't. It's not about making the media excited and happy. It's about getting the fans there and what they can do for them. So if they're treating the media this way, then just it multiplies the opportunities and what they're doing for the fans who attend these games. And look, the bottom line, bowl games exist as a means of economic development. They're trying to get people to come to their cities, stay in hotels, eat in restaurants. They want them to have a great time and go back and talk about it. So, it's as I tell my children, or told them many times, now they're young adults, follow the money. Just follow the money, and that's usually where the truth is. If you just look at the trail like that. And so, the Belk Bowl was a great experience. I haven't been there. That's one I'd like to get to. I'd like to get to the Houston Bowl. I know this is a low-level bowl, but I went to NRG Stadium for the first time this season with Ole Miss in the season opener against Texas Tech, and I see what a nice facility that is. But I'll tell you, my best experience has been the Cotton Bowl, and I've been fortunate to cover the Cotton Bowl 4 times. And while I haven't been off to the Fiesta Bowl or the Rose Bowl or things like this, I've been around enough people who have, and everything that I hear from people in our business is that the Cotton Bowl is just the number one event in terms of how it treats the media and fans. Okay? And again, the Cotton Bowl is a group that wants everyone associated with its game to have a great experience. And that includes the media. And it's been really amazing to cover that game and see the attention given to the working stiffs there who are there the whole week, going to the practices, writing the stories, and things of that nature. And look, the Cotton Bowl, Logan, they got left out of BCS. They weren't in that rotation, and that really kind of that was an affront. It bothered them. That was an insult. they were one of the traditional Big Four New Year's Day games when they had conference champions of the Big Eight and the Southwest Conference meeting there. And all of a sudden, they just were a lesser game on the national stage, but they never started acting like a lesser game. They always acted like a major player in the bowl games on New Year's Day. And, they had some challenges there with an aging stadium. They had some challenges with the unpredictable weather for North Texas at that time of year. It was most of the time it was going to be much better weather in Miami. I mean, these are reasons that the Cotton Bowl eventually was not in that BCS rotation of championship games. But when they moved, were able to say, look, we're moving from old Cotton Bowl Stadium to the new Dallas Cowboys Stadium, AT&T Stadium now. That was a hurdle they were able to clear. And because they continued to work as a major game, act as a major game, I mean, it was a no-brainer that they were going to be in the rotation when the college football playoff came around. And now that's where they are, and they're back in the spotlight of the national games. And I'll tell you something else, Logan, that goes along with the success of these bowl games is when you have the same people in place running these events year after year after year. There's something to be said with experience in dealing with different teams, in dealing with the NCAA, in dealing with the networks. Okay, there's something to be said for having the same people in place and doing it well year after year after year. That's why you see Dallas getting big events often. That's why you see New Orleans with a stadium that is not modern, but has been made as modern as possible with as many updates as they can there at the Superdome. When you see big events there, it's the same people running those events, and that experience matters. So Cotton Bowl was a great experience. They didn't take me out to a racetrack, but lots of other things, just a lot of parties, more or less, that different events at this hotel or that hotel and things like that are also available for the fans. They just happen to invite the media. And, Logan, I always like it when I go off to a game like that and there's an NBA game in town, something different. That's always good, too. When I was covering the Peach Bowl in Atlanta, it was really nice because you were able to walk from your hotel over to the game and walk back and walk through Centennial Olympic Park decorated at Christmas. That was always a nice experience as well. So I enjoy doing things like that. And, one year at the Cotton Bowl, that's where most of my big bowl experience is, having been there 4 times. They had really unusual weather of like sunshine and mid-50s through the week. And I went with my family the day before the game to Six Flags over Texas there in Arlington. And it was pretty neat. Most of the rides were open. It wasn't overly crowded. And the weather was, pretty good with the light jacket. So anyway, the experience has a lot to do with people in place running the games. And, when they've been doing it a long time, that matters.
Yeah, and number 2 on my list is the Orange Bowl. I went earlier that Mississippi State had such a good year. The Orange Bowl was a great experience down there in Miami. At the old Joe Robbie Stadium, I think it's played at the Hard Rock Stadium where the Dolphins are now, but this one was at Joe Robbie Stadium. Mississippi State played Georgia Tech and got beat in that game. Couldn't stop the option in that game. But the week leading up was a really good experience. Those folks put on a great bowl. Probably the most productive I've ever been as a reporter. They actually set the entire team down in one huge room. And at the time, allow us to talk to true freshmen unless they had played in the game. Well, they brought the entire team to that bowl game. So all the true freshmen that were off limits throughout the season were available, and you could talk to them. So that's what I did. They gave us 1 hour with the entire 100 and some odd players that were there. And I think I did 16, 18 interviews in an hour, just sitting down with those players that I'd never talked to before and got all those things. So it was great for me I think I spent the entire, from the time the bowl ended to the time spring practice started, I was able to write feature stories on all those players that I wasn't able to talk to. So I just thought that was a really cool thing about the Orange Bowl is they made everybody on the team available. And like I said, the coaches couldn't stop me from talking to players that they deemed off limits. So I thought that was really cool.
You know what? And that's a great point, because a lot of these bowls require an open locker room or require that kind of access to players. And it's not only players. Logan, you and I are fortunate to be at schools where you can request and talk to assistant coaches, and it's not that way at LSU and Alabama, at some other schools, where only the head coach speaks. And it means a lot when you can talk to different people and have a different voice and have a different look at a player or a topic. It just really helps with what we're trying to do. So for some people who don't have that access on a weekly basis to go to a bowl game and all of a sudden the coordinators are available or the assistant coaches are available, that's like Christmas. I mean, and you run around and you talk to these guys as much as you can. You go a whole year of just seeing them on the sideline, and then all of a sudden you can talk to them, and that's pretty neat for those guys. But yeah, the access is a big thing at these bowl games. And I'll tell you something else, Logan, not to go down the list and rank every one, because my experience has been that all of these bowl committees, all these people are trying. Okay, they're trying to put on a good experience. And I think the Music City Bowl is a very underrated experience. They've got a nice pro stadium where the Titans play. You've got a downtown, if you're staying there, if that's where the hotel is, that you can walk around downtown and then take the footbridge over the river and you're at the stadium. That's nice to be able to do that. But there are fan events that I saw during the Music City Bowl week that I thought, look, man, even if I didn't want to go to the game, I'd come up and go to these. That'd be a nice way to spend some time the day before the game. If you had time off, just the pep rallies and concerts and things like that. So lots of those events right before the game. I think it's a very underrated experience. I look at the Liberty Bowl, Logan, and when I would see Ole Miss in the mix for the Liberty Bowl, I'm crossing my fingers and hoping they go somewhere else. But that's not because the people with the bowl are not working hard to create a good experience there as well. They do send their players different places, and typically where the players go, the media follows because you're covering them. So they do have different things for the players, but so much of the experience is the stadium itself. Is the game, is game day. I mean, for a lot of fans, that's all they see in a bowl game, and so that's just that's not a good experience for Memphis, and it won't be until there's a different stadium, or until they just blow up Liberty Bowl Memorial Stadium and start over. But that's what's holding back that bowl game in terms of perception. Logan, we got just a couple of minutes left, man. Let's talk basketball.
Yeah, the game. Okay.
Go ahead, man. Finish up.
Well, I was going to say, I actually, made the list. The St. Petersburg Bowl was number 3 on there for me. Just not a bowl that's has an SEC tie, but they did a really fine job putting on experience. Practiced all week in Clearwater, unbelievable experience. Gator Bowl number 4, the Music City Bowl number 5. I didn't cover the week leading up to that game. I just covered the game itself. So supposedly that could probably be higher on the list had I went for the whole week. And then last but not least, the Liberty Bowl ranking number 6, the last on my list because of that very reason. The stadium is so bad. And one year that I covered Parrish, there was a column in front of me, and all I could see was the 20, the 10, and the end zone. That was all the field I could see. So I thought 30 yards of the field, and I had to watch most of the game on a monitor. Like I said, it was just the stadium experience. Those folks did a fine job. I enjoyed practice at Rhodes College that week. A great, place, just a cool looking college campus. But, that just kind of rounds out my list just to finish that up before we get into basketball.
Yeah. And the Liberty Bowl is not going to maximize its experience as a bowl destination until there's a different stadium. I mean, that's just all there is. as far as bowl games I've covered, I rank the Independence Bowl ahead of it. Okay, because it's a better stadium in Shreveport, and I know for years people would roll their eyes because that was considered the lowest level of SEC bowl tie-ins. But I've gone there, covered a few days of practice, and have seen how hard those people work, and what they were trying to do for players and media. And when you compare the stadiums between Shreveport and Memphis, it's a better stadium in Shreveport. All right, a couple minutes left, Logan. Give me 60 seconds of Mississippi State basketball. What's going on with the Bulldogs?
Well, the men are ranked 22nd right now. They beat McNeese State 90-77 Monday night or Tuesday night. I forget what night it was. But anyway, won that game, shot a lot of threes in that game, made a lot of threes in that game. That's not always been the case for Mississippi State this season. Lamar Peters got hot, scored a career-high 27 points for them. And, got a big game coming up in New Jersey coming up on Saturday against Clemson. So, that'll be a big game. A couple of marquee games coming up for Mississippi State. They play Clemson, then they got Cincinnati here at home next week. So a couple of big games, big opportunities for Mississippi State coming up. The women still undefeated, ranked number 6 in the country. That has not changed. They did have a big win over top 10 Texas on Sunday and have a big game tonight against Marquette. Marquette's ranked number 18 in the country. So 2 top 20 games back to back. And Mississippi State's playing well on the women's side. A different team than they were. We'll see how they finish up, but they got a chance to make some hay in these last 2 games, with Texas on Sunday and then Marquette tonight.
All right, for Ole Miss on the men's side, it's been a week since they played. They've had finals this week. They had an 83-60 win over Louisiana Monroe, the alma mater, last Saturday. All right, the biggest thing, Logan, for this team right now is Blake Henson, the freshman, has really begun to score at different levels, as Kermit Davis says. He's the power forward, 6'7", 229 guy. If they can get some offense from him from that position, that's really going to change the look of this team. And he's had back-to-back double-figure games now against ULM and San Diego the previous Wednesday last week, of where he has been more aggressive offensively. He has scored in the paint more. He's rebounded a little bit more. And in doing this, he's been able to hit three-pointers a little more easily. He had been settling for that shot. So he's one to keep an eye on. The Rebels play again Saturday night in Normal, Illinois, against Illinois State. So this is a team, Illinois State, that's 5-3. You can't overlook teams like this. They won in Oxford before in the NIT several years ago. I'm sure that there's been quite a bit of change from that, but that's the next game for the Rebels. The Ole Miss women, still not good. They've lost 5 straight. They're going to struggle. That's what we're seeing. Lots of newcomers, lots of things going on there as Yolette McPhee-McEwen tries to build that team. Folks, that's it for this edition of Double Coverage, a production of the Daily Journal. We thank you for clicking in with us today. Come back and join us next week.